really has in its focus a healthier community. And part of that is giving people the opportunity to be involved physically, whether that's biking or walking or whatever else they want to do. A small part of our work has been with the Safe Routes to School program. We've had 3 planning grants. The last one, we just completed the planning on, and it involves both the public and faith-based schools in our community, grades pre-kindergarten through 8, and their involvement in what we'll call active transportation, or walking and biking to school. The Kansas Department of Transportation offers this program. It is federal money that comes out to each of the states. And through this planning grant, what we've done, we've used the Safe Routes to School arrival and departure tallies, which look at how kids got to school, how they went home. That was done both in October and April of this last school year. Pretty interesting information. If you really think about it, it makes sense that about 66% of our kids in those age groups actually come to school in a family vehicle. And it doesn't appear that it makes a whole lot of difference if they live a mile away from school or 20 miles away from school. If mom and dad are going to work or whatever, they drop them off as opposed to walking or riding buses or whatever. On the way home, that changes quite a bit from 66% to 42%, and that difference, if they live out of town, they ride the school bus. If they live in town, the number of kids that walked triples or quadruples, walking home at the end of the school day. And that information was pretty consistent between the Lloyd Junior High age kids, the White Elementary kids, and St. John's kids. The second thing we did was a survey about walking and bicycling to school for parents. And what we asked them in that was, how do your kids get to school? It basically duplicated the information we got on the arrival and departure tally sheets, but also asked them information about why don't they walk to school, what are the reasons involved with that. And the issues that really came out of that affected their decision to either allow or disallow walking or biking to school centered on distance for those living outside of town. For those inside of town, there was a variety of safety and traffic concerns. As adults, we may look at 8th Street and say that's a pretty safe place to cross, with the crossing guards and all that kind of thing. But as parents look at that for their second grader or whoever, it becomes a little bit more of a daunting issue. 46% cited the lack of sidewalks or pathways to get to school, that they didn't want their kids to be walking in the streets and or bicycling without a designated bike route, a safe bike route. And 44% cited the safety at intersections and crossings, or lack of pedestrian crossings. Over 80% of the parents did say that the school encourages the walking, and we've done a lot of things to get involved with that. We've had our walk and ride to school days where the kids would either walk to school, or if they rode the bus, they'd get off at the stadium and be supervised and walk to school from there, just as an incentive. Okay. The third thing was a sidewalk incentive. And in talking to Mike in the past and with Glenn, the city's sidewalk maps are very outdated. Some of them 45, 50 years old. And in order to really look at the issues involving sidewalks, we felt we needed a lot more information than those old maps. We had 60 volunteers, 45 Lloyd High seniors, and 15 National Honor Society students from St. John's. got a little bit of training on color coding the maps and that kind of thing. Schwab Eaton broke down the maps of the city into sectors, and we used a satellite imagery to put those maps together, finding that some of the maps available on Google and from KDOT were inaccurate. High school was in the wrong place, St. John's School was in the wrong place on the map, things like that. What our kids did is we broke them up into teams of 3, and each team took a set of sector maps and walked both sides of the street and color coded what the sidewalks were like on in those instances. And I know you can't see it from where you're at, but each side of the street is marked in a different color if it was coded that way, to identify the sidewalks on that street and what kind of condition they were in. The good condition meant that they were fairly even. Fair condition, we use something I learned in Boy Scouts. We learned a simple observation technique. One knuckle on your finger is about an inch. And so they went around checking the cracks and seeing if there was an inch of difference or not. Anything beyond that, they had digital cameras with them. They took pictures and they used their clipboards that they had as a measurement device. They were 11 3/4 inches high, and you could pretty much estimate if that route pushed the sidewalk up 6 inches or 9 inches or whatever. Poor condition was all broken up. There were a few areas that still had the limestone sidewalks. Most of them had very defined seams in them with grass growing up and that kind of thing. And then we had some areas that were totally overgrown with grass. We knew the sidewalk was under there, but you couldn't rate the condition of those. All in all, they covered 70 sectors. They brought their sector maps back, and some of our AWARE team members checked to make sure they covered all the streets, and we had 6 adults out supervising as they were doing their survey. And Schwab Eaton took the survey maps, combined them into one large map, this one, and basically that gives us a picture of what's out there right now. The sidewalk audit indicate that approximately 50% of the streets in Beloit have no sidewalks on either side. And there were a couple of areas where we noted that the east and westbound streets had the greatest lack of sidewalks. The center part of town, north and south, was in pretty good shape as far as having sidewalks there, but their condition wasn't necessarily that good. There were 35 city blocks in the west part of town that are not on the map here, all the way out to Western. And because of the size of the map, we didn't include them in this map because there's no sidewalks there at all. The furthest over that we have a sidewalk going west is on 4th Street on the north side of the street, and it goes as far as Logan and stops. And a good portion of that is broken up and covered with grass and that type of thing. Of the streets that had sidewalks in place, approximately 60% are rated as fair to poor. In other words, they had at least an inch difference between one slab and the next, or as much as 11 to 12 inches. Okay, after receiving the project, after getting all this information, what we did is, if you look at the last page on your handout there, we just sent a simple map of Beloit home with every kid that lived in the community, and asked the parents to write their address on it and take a pen or pencil and mark the route that they would have their child go to school if they were walking or riding a bike. And as a result of that survey, we put together the maps that are on that last page. The lines that the colored lines that you see on those maps were the most often suggested for their students' travel. It was interesting that to me anyway, that in some cases, we had a few people that wanted their kids to walk down 8th Street from the west, and a bigger number from that western part of the town wanted them to stay down on 7th Street and stay away from the traffic. The same was true on 8th Street from Hersey on east. Working with that information and talking with Stuart Porter at Schwab Eaton, we looked at priorities for repair and replacement or new construction, and the number one priority as identified by the parents and working with Schwab Eaton in terms of ease of putting in sidewalks are the two pink colored lines there. And priority number 2 is mostly repair and maintenance. That would be on Poplar and Bell Street. And the blue lines are mostly repair and maintenance with some new areas in the Circle Drive area and then all the way out across Highway 24 on 8th Street to that subdivision that's out there. The grant that's available right now is worth $200,000, and it's for infrastructure, sidewalks. And in working with Stuart over at Schwab Eaton, the most feasible and practical way to go about this and meet the greatest need, which is the east-west travel, would be to complete a new sidewalk on one side of the road of 7th Street and the same on 12th Street. 7th Street would go from Poplar to Western, 12th Street would be from Poplar to the front door of the elementary school on Bell Street. Our discussion went around several different items. There is a match that the city would have to match 20% for $40,000, so $200,000 from KDOT and $40,000 from the city. It can be in kind, and in my discussions with Mr. Porter, cost-wise, it looked like that in-kind match would work out if the city put in the sidewalk on 12th Street and we bid out the other sidewalk down on 7th Street. I've got 3 phone calls into KDOT right now, making sure that there's not a specific timeline that has to be followed. Their application form indicates that you go through the process of doing the specs and the bidding and all that and start it. In the case of the city part of it, none of that would be started until after the work is done on the North Campus area and Cherry Street area down south of the Our proposal in this grant application basically asks KDOT to award $200,000 to the city of Lloyd for the 2 streets that are marked in the pink or red color on your map. That would provide links for a higher number of students to walk safely to school. And I would cite that the elementary school last year did a study on exactly where the population of the kids are in Beloit, and that western part of Beloit has got a higher number of kids out playing in the streets, if you will, that their parents say they would walk or bike to school if they had sidewalks. So those are the things that we're looking at this point. The crunch time is all this has to be turned in by Friday. And so we brought the resolution in yesterday and asked about getting on the agenda to present it to you. The downside is over the last 5 years, the numbers of grants available at a level of $300,000 has decreased to the point that there will only be 2 awarded at $200,000 this year. And Mr. Stewart has worked on some of the KDOT things like this before, and talked to some of the other folks that, from other locations that have done it. And he basically said that in order to make a difference and have people notice what you've done, you have to really be unique and think outside the box and that type of thing. And he really complimented us by saying, hey, I don't think you guys can even see the box. You're so far outside the box that by using the students to do the mapping and by doing parent surveys and that kind of thing to get the community input. So I will quit talking at this point and entertain any questions you have. Matt?
So if we're doing 12th Street, does that mean we're gonna open 12th Street to traffic? Like, it hasn't been open to forever during school years? And since we'll have sidewalks in there? Is that what
That will certainly be an option.
Okay. And Glenn, would that be the Parks Department or the Street Department that would be putting in that? That would be assisting in.
Or doing the
in-kind?
in-kind, it would be transportation.
So-
The in-kind thing, now, if the city did labor on 12th Street, would that take up part of our expense? And
Sure.
that would go towards,
Exactly.
so we wouldn't necessarily have to come up with $40,000 as long as.
No, it would, I'm making a presumption here, but it would be during normal work time. You know, they'd be done with the North Campus and the Cherry Street things and move on to whatever's next. Well, we didn't want to do it that, so it would interfere with those projects, because those need to get done here.
Well, no, my point was that rather than the city coming up with 40,000, we did some of the labor that would account for,
Exactly.
in lieu of money.
Labor and equipment use also.
And we've been talking heavily about getting some sidewalks. So.
Well, and it notes in there, in that last item on page 10, I think it is, that the planning committee's been doing for the last year, that preliminary report that came out does cite safe routes to school in several places. And so it kind of fits into the timeline that we're all on officially.
Would that be the sidewalks next to the curb in, or do you have to have space?
It can be either way.
Well, just visualize that going through there, there's one place where you just about have to put it on right next to the curb.
Yeah, when I was talking to the guys there at SWAB meeting, you know, I don't know what is the most practical, but in terms of putting in forms and all that kind of stuff, if they use the curb as part of the form,
Right.
that eliminates a little bit of work too. Nothing's positive that we're gonna get this, but the way that money's drying up, if they're gonna give it to somebody this year, that we might as well have our, with anybody else's.
You have to submit this by Friday?
It has to be postmarked by Friday. One of the issues, I'm not bad-mouthing anybody here, but one of the issues, we did that survey of parents on what they preferred in terms of walking and biking to school, and they were put in the kids' backpacks when they went home. Well, some of them didn't get to us until mom and dad checked the backpacks in June. They said, we were supposed to do this then. So some of them didn't get delivered back to the elementary school until really late. And Cheryl wasn't too excited about me having all those maps scattered all over the kitchen table. Any other questions?
I'm just actually, I'm excited. This sounds like a great plan if we can get it passed. My only concern is stretching our transportation department kind of thing. And as long as we get that scheduled so that we can get our guys doing what they're already obligated to do, get some time to go do that. I think we can get that.
And I know they've had a lot of things they haven't done in the last year and a half or 2 years too, so. But that is a little more economical than doing it all out.
Quick question, did we, I think we had one of these before that we applied for. And maybe Marshall was doing it.
Might have been, yeah.
I can't remember what we got the money, or I mean, actually got the routes going or not, and then just, or else it would just drop. But I think
I'm really
it's a
not,
good deal.
I'm really not superstitious, but the Aware team has applied for 12 grants and gotten all 12 of them. And this is number 13, so, whatever that means.
And it's Friday evening.
We'll keep it going. Greg, thank you and your group
You
for the
bet.
effort you've done. Much appreciated.
And depending on your decision on the resolution, we'll send it out Friday or not.
Entertain a motion, the resolution, to accept the resolution 2014-14 safe routes to school. Been made by Councilman Miller. Have a second? Second by Councilman Gordon. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. Mandy, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Richard,
Yes.
Gingler,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Latrell,
Yes.
Brown,
Here.
Audie,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the formal action. It's the window bid for the downtown Somerville Station, CDBG unit. We had discussed this last week and voted.
I have a question for Katie or for Doug McKinney. Being we already made and accepted Geisler, in order for Mr. Cooper and Mr. Roder to get the windows in, because I called Salina Glass today and probably talked to them for an hour.
Okay.
And, I think, I don't know, Doug, do you have to, in your process that you have at regional planning, when you vote and you take a bid and you keep it when it's brought back to the council for a second time consideration, does it have to be rebid? Or can he just throw in a proposal like he did?
Oh, that explanation
Yeah.
was part of his original, but it wasn't presented to the city council. Now, in regards to the original bids, we did double check to make sure both Geisler and Glass Services bids were still good. Normally, they're good for 30 days, and so we verified that.
Well, on this proposal from Glass Services, I talked to him today about the original bid. Talked to him about credit for the lead-based paint, which would come off of the bid, the original bid. And he said that he's been talking with you, Mike and Jeff, for about 2 years on this. The windows that were bid by Geisler are basically a residential window, single, 1/16" thick glass. And he said, they had a hailstorm in Salina, and out of 1,000 windows, 990 that they had to replace were color windows, because they didn't take the force of the wind and the hail. And he also told me that by the time he got the packet, it was 2 days before the bid was due. And so,
Actually, by the time he looked at that,
that's, yeah.
because
'cause
he had it a
said-
month ahead of time.
Yeah, but he didn't have.
Because I hand delivered it.
Yeah, he said so. And he said he did not have time to look at it because he was busy. And he said that's why everything was so off, because you're bidding a residential window instead of a heavy commercial window. And the commercial window, which was explained to me, is made out of all of aluminum.
Yes.
And they would solid aluminum. They would be like the ones at the courthouse and the bank. They would be, just 100% better windows. I also asked him, why why he put the $900 and some for the performance bond. He said if they are insured, the company is insured,
And we have all that information from both
yeah.
bidders.
And he said that, if, say for instance, he got the bid, and then he and the owners of the building, or for some reason, he decided that he was not going to fulfill his end of the deal, the performance bond, would cover that. He would hire someone else would be hired to finish the job, and then this guy would have to pay for it. The bill would come to him. So that,
Essentially call that bond. That's another form of insurance
yeah,
that helps make sure the job gets done at or
yeah,
lower price.
yeah. And he explained to me, he'd been in business 20-some years. We talked a lot about the lead issue. He took that off because apparently he is not going to be taking out the lead-based paint. It will either be done by nitrate or nitrate, it would be bid out to someone else
It'd
to
be
remove this.
volunteers,
Right.
essentially. The owners would be responsible for it.
Right,
And
and,
just so the council knows, it's not a requirement for a commercial structure that doesn't house persons as a residence to have lead-based paint removers or abaters.
Mhm.
If it's a residence in Kansas, it is a requirement, but not, especially on a second floor like this. But what is required is that the contractors, whomever it is, XYZ Incorporated, take care, place tarps down, catch paint chips as they fall. It's just a nicety to do that. It really helps the environment, let alone, and the environment being just in general, so that litter doesn't take place. But both, well, everybody that was on the 15 contractor list had gone through lead-based paint training, the basic training, so that they would know how to capture paint chips, essentially, as they fell and batted them out in homes.
Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, I just, we had several questions that are going, and I didn't hear a real good addressing of this one. Is there any legal problems the city has for having passed the previous bid and then doing the same bid over again? I'd like to hear from our city attorney.
No contract has been signed. Now, it's certainly not a good practice to get into, but a council 2 weeks ago cannot bind you guys if we have no contract or nothing in place with the company that was selected last time. So yes, you can make a motion and go with a different direction. Like I said, certainly not something we want to get into the practice of, but that's,
Katie,
well,
yes.
but also, Katie, based on the new information that we've got from Doug, we didn't have that before.
Correct.
Katie, so the proper procedure would be to rescind the window bid motion from the last meeting and then have another motion
one.
to approve the bid from Solano.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's the correct one?
Yes.
What?
I guess my biggest question in all this is why we didn't have this information last time.
that's what I asked Mr. Cooper when he called me up on my cell phone after this last meeting. And he left me a voicemail, and he wanted me to call him right away. He asked me why I did what I did. You know, that there could be repercussions to the city if, you know, we didn't go ahead and relook at this, because he could decide to drop the project and just let it go. And I myself think that those windows downtown need to be fixed. That building needs to be renovated. And after I've talked to this guy today, I'd like to rescind my motion from the last meeting to accept the bid from Geisler,
So that's a motion.
that's a motion.
Do I have a second?
I have a comment.
Motion on the floor. I have a motion from Councilperson Abel to rescind the window bid motion from the last meeting with a second by Councilman Hardy. Further discussion?
The way I read this, since we were not notified about rescinding the motion, it takes a 2/3 majority to rescind the motion. So that's the only real answer on that, is what I've read about. If a motion is made, and it's, you have to be notified before the meeting that it's gonna be rescinded. So as far as your legality, I could care less what kind of windows we put up, but if you ask about legality,